Hey, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to start drawing faces today. Okay, this is going to be this lesson is going to be on just the beginning of drawing faces, and to me, this is the most important thing I can teach somebody how to draw, because faces are the focal point of what we look at when we engage somebody, right? When we run into somebody, whoever it is, we're looking at their face. In particular, we're looking at their eyes. So it's really important that we have a handle on how to draw those things and how to make them look correct if we want to be a good artist, right? If we want to communicate a character or something like that, which is what we're going to lean towards in these series of lessons, we want to be able to get that correct, right? People recognize when something's a little bit off right away because we're so used to looking at faces all day, every day. It's just what we see the most, okay? So we're going to go ahead and take this first lesson and just break down some things about the face and get some proportions correct, all right? And this is, again, the most important thing I think in drawing all the human body is getting the face right, and in particular getting the eyes right. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at a face now and break it down. Okay, so let's go ahead and break down this face here. So the first thing to note is obviously that the face is symmetrical. Okay, so meaning we can pretty much draw a line down the middle and we've got the same thing on both sides of the face. Okay, so that makes it pretty easy when we're drawing a straight on view. And it also just helps us with a lot of markings here. Now, no face is exactly symmetrical, okay? So that's something to take note of. So here's a little Photoshop I did here of duplicating the face. And you can see she looks very different, right? With a perfectly symmetrical face. So even somebody who's very good looking or beautiful, right? Still their face isn't perfectly symmetrical. Nobody's is that way. For our purposes and for drawing purposes, for the most part, we're almost always just trying to make it, for the most part, symmetrical, okay? At least to start with. So let's take the height of the head and to the bottom of the chin, okay? That's my measurement here. And here is the length of the face. And let's try and find out where the eyes are. So that's the first thing. So if I put a line in the middle of the eyes, that's just about where they are, right? Obviously the outside of the eye is a little higher than the inside, but that's about the middle of the eye. So if I break this line in half, so my my line here, you can see that halfway is a little bit above the eye, or for this face, it looks right about where the top of the eye is. So our eye is a little bit lower than halfway. Okay, so that is a good thing to remember. This is actually probably the most important thing I think you can remember. A lot of times I find that people think the eye is in the top third of the face. We kind of think of the eyes being on the top of the head, maybe because we have our nose and our mouth and everything below it. And then we think, oh, on the top we just got our eyes pretty much. But in truth, our eyes are a little bit lower than the middle, okay? This is the thing I see most students get wrong all the time, is putting the eyes much too high. I've even seen it in some drawing books, and I had a teacher that I know that was teaching the eyes are the top third, and I told her, she didn't believe me, and then she came back like a week later and was like, okay, I researched it and you're right, they're about in the middle. So yeah, about the middle, but a little bit lower, okay? So next, let's see the nose. So if I break from this halfway mark, right, going from the halfway mark, you can see that the nose is just about halfway at the bottom of the nose. Just about halfway if we take the lower half of the face, okay, the lower half of the face. So that is pretty convenient. And let's go ahead and look at the mouth now. And if I make a line where the mouth is, and you can immediately see that there's more space in the bottom, right? So the mouth is a little bit higher than halfway. And then when I put the halfway mark on, you can see it right here, right? So that's where halfway would be, and the mouth is a little higher. So these are things to remember. An easy thing to kind of get our bearings is making a line halfway, and then we kind of can place where the eyes are a little bit below that, then making another halfway line when we're drawing on the bottom of the, for the bottom half of the face, and that's where the bottom of the nose is. And then if we make another line, cutting that in half, we can put the mouth a little bit above that, okay? Or we can kind of adjust our lines. But these are our markers, okay? So let's go ahead and look at another face. And let's take a look at where he lines up. So this guy's eyes are A little higher, okay? And I tried to account for the hair here a little bit, so I mean, it could be a little bit off, but this is, this is giving us about. So comparing to the other person, we've got this guy's eyes being a little bit higher, but still, the top of the eyes being close to that halfway point, right? The nose, his nose is a little bit higher than halfway, quite a bit higher than halfway. And his mouth is just about the same place where the other person's mouth was. And we can see that it's a little bit above halfway. Okay, so noting the nose can be a little higher. And here's something else I didn't point out in the other one, but where the ear is. So if we look at the ear, it is between the nose and the eye, okay? So a little bit above the eye there in this guy, but this gives us an about kind of place to put it. So, between the bottom of the nose and the eye, and we'll pretty much get that in the right spot. So let's go ahead and look at her again and see where her ears are. So her ears are quite a bit higher, I think, and quite a bit higher than the nose there. But this gives us an about area to put it. Okay, noticing it could be a little higher. Okay, so let's compare with another person, another model here, and let's look at her features. So she's really close to the first one with the female, the first female. So again, I tried to account for her curly hair here and kind of try to figure out where the top of her skull would be. But her eyes are pretty much exactly in the same spot. Nose pretty much exactly in the same spot, right at the halfway mark. And if you look at her mouth, it's a little bit above halfway, pretty much exactly like this first model's. Okay, so let's look at this gentleman now. Okay, there's his profile. So his eyes look here. So here's the tricky thing about this is that, the angle you tilted your face can kind of affect this. So here's, on the other profile, it looked like his eyes were a little lower. But here they look a little higher, and they were a little higher from what we could tell on the profile than the female's eyes, where her eyes were a little more, the two females, their eyes were a little lower. Yet this was still like the top, so, or close to the top. So now, everybody's face is different, so I haven't really said this. That's what gives it character. But what I'm looking for are some marks to show you, so you have something to go by, right? That we know that the eyes generally are about where this middle line is, right? In the middle of the face. And let's kind of keep looking and see what we find out. The nose, this one's pretty high up. But we can go halfway between the eyes and the chin to get about where the nose is. Now again, once again, we can make our characters look different by going a little higher, a little lower. And then the mouth, a little bit above halfway. So the mouth isn't, so if we go halfway, again, this is an easy mark to find, or halfway mark, but we know that our lips are going to be up from there a little bit. So the two female lips that we've looked at so far were higher, and his lip is higher as well, even higher. Which makes sense if his nose is higher, and maybe his face is tilted a little bit, who knows. Let's see. Let's look at a different one here. Let's look at another female here. Okay, so now look, she is almost dead on to where the other ladies were. Eyes are right around this line here, a little bit, right where this halfway is, a little lower. Nose is almost right on that halfway between the eyes and the chin, and her mouth is just about dead on, right? A little bit above halfway and a bit dead on where the other female eyes were. Okay, looking at another male here, and again, finding some similar things, some similarities. Look, again, a head tilt might matter a bit, and a little hard to tell with his hair being kind of spiked up, so I try to estimate, what might be more just spiked up. But his eyes are very close to this halfway mark. His are pretty much dead on the halfway mark, right? Where the females seem to be a little lower. And the other male we looked at, his eyes were a little higher as well. His nose is a little higher as well. And that kind of makes sense if we're thinking about males as typically having a larger chin. Okay? So again, we're looking at traits that we can communicate. Remember, I'm not saying every male has a large chin, and I'm not saying these are universal rules for everything, but as artists, we are trying to communicate certain aspects to people looking at our art. And if we want to communicate something more masculine, we might make the chin a little larger, which would mean we raise up the nose, raise up the mouth, right? And look, the eyes are dead on halfway here. So even raising everything up a bit, not going too much higher than this halfway mark in terms of where the eyes are. And if we want to look a little more feminine, we can lower the eyes a little bit, lower than halfway, the chin a little smaller, right? Which brings the nose down a little bit. And if you think about children have a larger head in proportion to the rest of their features, and it looks cute to us. We this is what we recognize as cute, right? So if and these females in this that I got these pictures from are like modeling to some degree, so they're pretty. So I think probably one of the traits that she's considered pretty and she's hired for this modeling thing is maybe that her head is a little larger. I think it's just one of those things we see. A slightly larger head looks a little cuter to us. Now, I'm obviously not talking about too big or it would look wrong, right? But slightly larger is going to make them look cute. You could use this for a male as well if you wanted a male to look cuter. So let's look at a profile real quick just to see if things line up. And they pretty much do. Bottom of the nose, mouth is pretty much the same spot. Eyes pretty much in the same spot. And again, I'm sizing these to estimate, so things can be a little off. All right, let's look at this guy. Oh, eyes are pretty much dead on right in the middle. Nose a little higher than this halfway mark. Okay. Lips obviously a little higher as well, again, making sense with a larger chin, so moving things up a little bit. And I'm not moving the marks around because I want us to be able to compare them to each other. So I want to keep the marks from that original picture so we can have some lines of comparison. Okay, let's look at another male. So once again, lips seem a little higher, nose is a little higher, and eyes are a bit higher, quite a bit higher, where the other guy's eyes were almost dead on in this middle. His are even above the mid zone. Maybe a little lower. I think his head's creeping over, but that's minor, right? Minor. Again, telling us more masculine chin, bringing the face up, the head not being quite as big. And, it's a small difference, but those are things we're looking for, okay? Let's look at something else now. Let me pull out our original picture. And let's look at some other aspects here that we can look at. So we've looked at kind of proportions of the placement of the eyes, the nose, and the mouth in terms of where they are vertically in the face. But let's look at something else. So here's one thing. So look at this. So I got an extra eye here. So eyes are typically, the average person's eyes are one eye apart. Okay, one eye apart. So if you're not sure how much to space, your eyes apart from each other, think about fitting one other eye there. Now, sometimes if you draw your eyes too big, that might mess things up, or if your eyes are too small, but I find this very helpful in terms of determining the size of the eye. Okay, let's look at this. So if we find kind of about the middle of the eye, like the pupil, if the person was staring straight at, we've got the mouth between the two lines here, okay? Corner of the mouth just about touching that middle point. So again, we're not splitting hairs here. We're looking for marks to help us draw. So fitting the mouth between the pupils, if they were staring straight forward, is a great mark for us to have. Okay, let's look at a male here and see how it lines up with him as well. All right, pretty much almost the same, right? So for our purposes here, we can see the eyes, the pupil just about at those lines, and the mouth just a little shy of hitting those marks there. But that's a really good mark to remember, where the mouth kind of fits. Let's throw another person there. Okay, very similar, right? Similar proportions. And let's look at one more guy here. And let's see. And just about the same. So that's a very consistent mark, right? Okay, his eyes. So you see the photo might be tilted a little bit, or his face is just not symmetrical, right? And you can see this eye is a little bit over here from that eye. And I'm not sure. But again, nobody's perfectly symmetrical. Okay, so let's look at the nose width here. So another line we can use for the width of the nose is the inside of the eyes. Okay, again, this is all talking about somebody looking straight at us. So pretty good mark to go by. Let's go ahead and compare that with somebody else here. Let's see what she looks like. Okay, very close. Her as well. Pretty much dead on, right? And obviously the width of the nose can change a bit, right? If somebody has a wider nose. Like her nose looks pretty narrow compared to... Her nose is a little wider. You can see it's slightly going out from these lines. And you can see hers kind of in from the lines. But it still gives us a nice mark to go by. And then we know if we're going wider than those lines, we're giving her a wider nose. And we go, no, if we go a little narrower from these lines, we're given a narrow nose. And all those little marks are super helpful. Okay, so on the male here, we can see even wider than her nose. Even her nose is a little wider, right? And then his nose even wider. And that kind of, I think, fits with masculine kind of features. Right, whoops, let me look back at this guy. Okay, he's got a pretty narrow nose for a man. He's got a very nice nose, nice narrow nose. Very similar to the first model, her nose. But again, this gives us marks, okay? So all these little markers are good for us to use when we draw, okay? So we're going to keep those things in mind as we start drawing our faces in the next lesson. When we're drawing a male, maybe we want to give it a larger chin, raise the nose up a little bit, the mouth up a little bit, the eyes up a little bit. When we want to draw a female, we might want to lower the eyes slightly, right? Put the mouth a little bit above the halfway between the nose and the chin, and the nose almost dead on between the midway line and the chin. So all those things help us. All right. Hope you guys learned something in this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one, and we'll get drawing.